What's up, guys? I'm going to be giving you my list on the top 5 best flagship smartphones that you can find in the $200 price range. So I want to start off with my newest addition, the Galaxy S9 Plus that I've had on the channel here. Really impressed with this phone. It's really cheap right now. You can find one for around 180 bucks, and I've just been blown away with performance on this phone, and just the overall build quality on here is excellent. You have an aluminum frame, a glass back on here. It feels very solid in the hand. Has a nice weight to it. IP68 dust and water resistant as well. You do on here have a Super AMOLED HDR10 display at 6.2 inches, so it's a fairly I think it's a pretty nice size display, even for people with smaller hands. It does have a 1440p resolution, and the unique thing about this display these days is that there's actually no punch hole or no notch on this display, and you also have on here 529 for the PPI, so just an extremely sharp, bright, and colorful display on here. This guy is running Android 10 on top of the Snapdragon 845 and Adreno 630. Overall performance was really solid on this device as well. Not really any hiccups or stutters or anything like that. And also your gaming performance on here is still going to be very good. You're able to play at high settings on most of the games like Call of Duty, PUBG. I have a full gaming test, please check that out. You do have micro SD support on here, 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on the base model. Also, you have some really nice sounding stereo speakers as well. They get very loud. It has good haptic feedback, and you have a headphone jack as well on this phone too. This phone still uses the physical fingerprint scanner, which works great. You also have the option for face unlock. You also have NFC, your iris scanner, and you also have Samsung desktop support as well on here, which is really nice. So this phone also has a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto, 4K video, 30 or 60 FPS, and then an 8 megapixel selfie and a 2 megapixel dedicated iris scanner. Shoots in 1440p on the front. Overall image quality is pretty good on here. Yes, you are missing an ultra wide, but the telephoto lens is nice to have, and colors look great on here. Detail, dynamic range. It's just a really good camera at this price point. I think it beats a lot of the $200 budget smartphones that you would get these days. So on here, battery life is respectable at 3,500 milliamp battery with 15-watt charging with wireless charging. I was able to get through a day with this phone around 5 to 6 hours of screen on time, depending on how you use it. So overall, just an excellent device here. Next is going to be the OnePlus 7 Pro. So this is around 250 bucks, and I will have all the links down below for you guys to check out. I still absolutely love this phone. It's still my daily driver here. You have a premium design on here. It's a glass and metal design, and it just feels great. Technically, it does not have an IP rating, but it is you can get it wet. It won't break. You do have on here, which is the best feature, a 6.67 inch Fluid AMOLED 90 Hz display. It is HDR10 plus. It's 1440p, 516 for the PPI. Overall, just a beautiful display, and the unique thing, of course, is that it is a full screen display, no punch hole, no notch, very slim bezels. It is a curved display, so it really feels like you're holding a screen in your hand. And you also have that high refresh rate on here as well, which I think is the only phone on this list with a high refresh rate. So just an awesome experience on top of Oxygen OS with Android 11 with the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640. It really blows through Oxygen OS. It's very fast still, and you also have great gaming performance as well. You can play most games at high settings. You do not have any SD card support, unfortunately. You do have 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here. So this phone also has stereo speakers, which sound pretty good. Good bass quality. They get pretty loud. Pretty good haptic feedback on this one. No headphone jack, unfortunately, on the 7 Pro. You also have NFC and a under the display fingerprint sensor, which is very fast on top of face unlock. Now this phone actually gets pretty good battery life at 4,000 milliamps, and it charges pretty fast with a 30-watt warp charge. So overall, the 7 Pro is definitely a phone you should take a look at. Now next is the Samsung Galaxy S10, or you can get the S10e. I'm going to talk about the S10 because we have not talked about it on a list so far. So this phone is really awesome, around $238 for the price point, and it's just an awesome device so far. So you have an aluminum frame on here, glass back. It's also IP68. I love the feel of this phone. Very slim, very nice to feel. I think it's still a very good looking phone. On here, you have the dynamic AMOLED display HDR10 Plus at 6.1 inches. This one actually has a very sharp display at 1440p, 550 for the PPI, and it has a slight curve to it, very slim bezels with the punch hole. I really like the display. It's very bright, very colorful, and I just enjoy watching content, playing games on this phone. I really like the screen size. So you do have Android 11, One UI 3.0, Snapdragon 855, and Adreno 640 on here. So again, performance is going to be really fast on here, and you also have great gaming performance as well. You also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and actually 8 gigs of RAM on the base model, so plenty of RAM for multitasking and stuff like that. You also have stereo speakers on board, which sound amazing, and you also keep the headphone jack on this guy too. You do have NFC on board, of course, with your under the display fingerprint sensor, which is very fast. So I absolutely, had zero issues with the speed of it or the accuracy. And you can also take advantage of face unlock. This has all the bells and whistles like Samsung desktop support, the reverse wireless charging on here as well, which is really cool. And I think the S10 also has very good cameras. It's pretty much the same on par with the S10e. So the only difference is that you have a telephoto lens. So you have a 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto, and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K, and then you have a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K. Overall, as you can see from the images, just excellent image quality, very clean shots on here, pretty good color as well. Dynamic range is fine. The ultra wide is good too. So like I said, all these phones camera wise, they're really gonna beat most budget phones at this price point. Now, battery life is just okay on this phone. It's a 3,400 milliamp battery with 15-watt charging. You also have wireless charging and, like I said, reverse wireless charging. So you get it like an average around 5 to 6 hours, which is pretty decent. So overall, the S10 is definitely a phone to check out, or if you want a smaller one, go with the S10e. Now, the Pixel 4 you can actually find for, again, that $200 price point. And I think this is an amazing phone, especially the camera is still really good. And this phone has a couple unique things to offer. So you do have a premium design on here, aluminum frame on here, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. This phone actually has a POLED display and it's 90 hertz. So I take that back. This phone does have 90 hertz. It's a 5.7 inch display, so it's kind of on the compact side. So if you want a phone with a very small display, then you could check this out. 1080p 444 for the PPI. Overall, I had zero issues with the display. Yeah, you do have a bit of bezel there, but Google makes up for it because this phone has very good face unlock. You also have Android 11, and you're going to get the latest version of Android when they come out. So you get updates really fast on the Pixel. You also have the Snapdragon 855, Adreno 640. This phone again does great performance wise running stock Android and also playing games. It does get hotter than most of these phones on this list, so I'd advise to buy a case or something like that. No SD card support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. They do have a 128 gig version as well. You also have stereo speakers on this guy, no headphone jack as well, and the stereo speakers sound really good. Very good bass quality, very good haptic feedback on this one as well. NFC is on board, and like I said, excellent Face ID on here too. So the highlight with this phone is the cameras, 12.2 megapixel. I still think this is the best shooter on this list. 16 megapixel telephoto, shoots in 4K, 8 megapixel selfie, shoots in 1080p. Overall, just excellent image quality, just really good colors, natural colors, good detail. Also, I wish it had an ultra wide, but you got the telephoto, so good portrait mode on here as well. I'm still really impressed with the Pixel 4's camera. So you do have on here a 2,800 milliamp battery with 18-watt charging with wireless charging. Now you'd be surprised, this phone actually can do around 6 hours of screen on time. I have a battery drain test if you guys want to check that out. Alright, so last is the LG G8X. This is just an awesome LG device, especially if you tag along and get the dual screen case on this guy. So you have an aluminum frame, a glass back, full premium design with IP68 dust and water resistant, a 6.4 inch OLED display, HDR10, 1080p 403 for the PPI. little wider drop notch. Overall, just a very nice, bright, colorful display, very sharp display. Android 10 with the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640 on here. Again, I think this is one of the best gaming phones on the list because if you attach that dual screen case, you can really take advantage of playing certain games. So definitely think about that if you're a gamer that plays games really, really well. You also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here. So plenty of storage. Also stereo speakers are on here, which sound pretty good. And the highlight feature with this phone is the headphone jack. You have a headphone jack with a quad DAC on here, so excellent audio experience as far as plugging in headphones. NFC is on board. The fingerprint scanner is under the display. That works fine as well. Cameras on here are actually pretty decent. 12 megapixel standard, 13 megapixel ultra wide, 4K video on the front and back with a 32 megapixel selfie. You get very natural colors, very good detail. The ultra wide is pretty close to the main, and video is pretty solid. Selfie cam is good. So overall, zero complaints. It's the same story with the rest of these older flagship phones. But you do have pretty good battery life, a 4,000 milliamp battery with 21 watt charging with wireless charging. So definitely check out the G8X, and definitely if you get that dual screen case, you can really turn this into a multitasking beast. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.